All right, we still have quite a few people coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and move into this next poll question. It looks like we're keeping a pretty steady split on these percentages here. We've got about 50%, and I'm going to share this with everyone. We've got about 50% of the audience that indicates they're still learning, and I think that's kind of all of us, even if we consider ourselves pros, right? Power users and point cloud pros, we're still learning. So about 33% are at that top tier, and then 17% are beginning to explore it. So that's fantastic. I think you are definitely in the right place here today. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We did hit that start button a little early, so I apologize if you came in and weren't quite sure if you were logged in too early or too late or what was going on. But thank you so much for making the time. This is our reality capture education series, and I have a panel of experts here that are just really fantastic. I'm excited to be here with them today. So we have on the line with us today over 75 years of combined experience, and that is just phenomenal. I mean, I've been at Leica Geosystems for a while. I talk to all these folks anytime a question comes in. These guys are the first ones that I reach out to anytime I have a question. For those of you who are in the audience, if you've been a Leica Geosystems customer for any length of time, I am sure that you have had discussions with the folks that are on the line here. And of course, these are just a few of our reality capture experts. We have a number of other people who you work with on a regular basis who are behind the scenes, and we will hopefully have a session coming up where we will invite all of them to participate. But with us today, our experts include Jonathan Efaw. He has more than 11 years of experience in the geospatial, terrestrial laser scanning, and mobile mapping industries. And he is a reality capture support analyst. He provides support and training for Cyclone 3DR workflows, and he is the technical lead for mobile mapping support. So he's our go-to person really for anything mobile mapping when it comes to those technical questions. Matthew Mazel is also on the line with us today. He's a laser scanning system and workflow analyst who's been training and assisting professionals with laser scanning for more than 20 years. Andrew Fournier has served as HDS technical support lead in North America for 23 years and is also the reality capture support manager. And then Michael Harvey has over 23 years of experience in laser scanning and is the senior product manager for Leica Geosystems reality capture and serving and engineering groups. So welcome to all of you. Welcome to those of you who are on the line. Today is a live Q&A session, so we will be taking questions from you in the audience. We want to know, what is it that you're struggling with? What challenges are you facing? Because this is a live Q&A, we have just a little bit of prepared material that we're going to share, but most of it is just going to be whatever you throw at us. We are going to hold this to 60 minutes today. So just to be respectful of everyone's time. So if we are not able to address your question, please know that either someone will reach out to you. We are hoping that we will be able to do these Q&A sessions on a regular basis. So if we get a lot of questions, that'll be great. That'll just tell us that we need to do this again in the very near future. I'm going to run just a couple more poll questions here, just to make sure that we have an understanding of who is in the audience with us today. This question is, do you use Leica laser scanning technology? So it's okay if you're here and you don't use Leica. We just want to know where you're at. Hopefully you are taking a look at Leica if you're not using us already. And we would like to just get an idea of where everyone is in terms of their technology. It looks like, yes, we do have quite a few people in the audience that use Leica, and that's fabulous, but that's okay. For those who are not, we'll still let you in. It's all right. And then just a quick question about your application, because reality capture, laser scanning obviously is used in a lot of different places. Surveying and engineering is obviously a big application, but we know that some people are capturing building documentation for construction, or maybe it's for architecture or heritage. We might have some people in the audience, it looks like we do, they're involved in public safety, documenting those crime and crash scenes. So again, just trying to get an idea of the bulk of our audience. It looks like most are in surveying and engineering, but we do have a good split among some of these other categories as well. So that's fantastic. And the information that we will share today really applies to every application. So you will definitely walk away with something you will value. And if you have questions, our panel of experts here will be able to answer your questions regardless of the application. And then real quick, we just wanted to get an idea of what software you're using. We are prepared to show you some things in the different software tools. So if you have a question about Register 360, we can dive in and show you some of that. Same thing with anything that's listed here, but just to give us an idea of where that application is. It looks like the bulk of people are using Register 360. But there are some other softwares being used as well, so I will share that out. And then one more here, and this is the last one. And I think everyone here would be interested in seeing how the other attendees answer those questions. What is your biggest challenge with reality capture? Because as much as we all would like things to be easy and go smoothly, of course, everything has some challenges. So looks like workflows are really standing out here right at the beginning. So Matthew, I think you're going to be getting a lot of questions in this webinar. Workflows and data management.
Be glad to help.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, that's really what we're covering a lot of in this Q&A with all of the software, being able to dive in and show you how to do things faster, how to do them better. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and share this out. Yeah, the workflows and data management is the clear winner here. All right, good to know. And with that, I think we're going to start. And I'd like to encourage those of you who are in the audience, if you have a question, please go ahead and just type it in. Go ahead and you have to type those questions in and then hit submit, and we'll start going through those on our end and answer as many of those as we can. But before we get to those questions, I just wanted to ask the panel, because you all have so much experience talking to customers, being at that front line of support. Especially Andrea, you've been involved in this for so long, and your name comes up all the time. Everyone just loves how helpful you are when they have a challenge. And so what are the challenges that you are hearing the most often right now? Is there like a standout challenge that you're addressing more than anything else, or that you're seeing more than anything else right now when it comes to reality capture and laser scanning?
Yes, it's how do I optimize the performance of my PC to work with my data in our reality capture software, laser scanning software. And the question is always, the root question that we have in support is, when do you experience challenges? Is it when you're importing data, exporting, or manipulating the point cloud? Usually when it's import, export, it would be more CPU, manipulating the cloud's GPU, but all of these processes do depend on your GPU. So we go through a series of settings and on the PC to take full advantage of the high-end graphics card to process this data and take full advantage of the capabilities of that graphics card. Now, I have Matthew here that can help demonstrate these settings for us, what settings are optimal for our software. And it goes across all of them. So it would be 3DR, Cyclone, Register 360 Plus, and if you're using CloudWorks, that would be the Autodesk products, and possibly CPO as well.
Yeah, and you know, I'll do a little screen share here, and I'll go over a couple of those different some of those different settings here. Let's see.
Make sure. Okay.
There we go. So the first thing that we really want to do when we're setting up our software initially is one of the biggest things is making sure that we have our GPU and that it's up to, you know, it's up to the spec. So you really want to, when we're getting into rendering millions of points and in some cases billions of points on the screen, all of this is rendered in real time from our data set. Not only is it rendered in real time, but the GPU is really a key. It's a key component when we're importing. So one of the things that I hear a lot of too, it's, you know, import speed. You know, what am I going to do whenever I've got this large data set? Because it's just, you know, having 100 scans is not really a large project anymore. So what we want to do is you want to open your NVIDIA control panel, and the first thing that if anybody wants to check your driver version, that can be such a big thing. If you've got a big supercomputer, or if you've got maybe a moderate computer, a lot of times updating this driver version can be have a huge impact on how our software performs. So you want to make sure that that's all up to date. And then, you know, we do support different types of video cards, but I personally recommend the NVIDIA components, the Quadro and the GTX and the RTX, those components. And then what you want to do is you want to go into your 3D settings here, and you want to add these programs under your program settings tab right here. And what that does is that links in, that makes our software interact and be able to utilize that GPU component. So you want to make sure that you have it set to your OpenGL rendering GPU and your power management mode to prefer maximum performance. And there's a couple other little tweaks, you know, without getting down into deep, you know, there's a couple other little tweaks that we can do on a case by case basis, because every computer is a little bit different, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, we've got so many different components, so many different manufacturers, and every computer goes together when it's being built just a little bit different. So, you know, that's one of the things that Andrea and I have noticed in the past. You know, you can take two identical computers, or so it seems, and then there's little things that we can do to tweak each system for optimal performance. So not only do we use our NVIDIA control panel here, but we also need to go into our graphics settings in Windows. This is a big one that if you haven't checked this out before, you might be able to adjust this setting here. What you'll do is you'll browse here for the different apps that you have on your computer. You know, you go into program files into our Leica Geosystems. It's really easy to find the executable. In this case, you know, I could do 3DR. We could do register 360, and you want to add that executable in to this Windows list here. And what it does is it enables you, once all of these things are linked into your Windows setting, you can go under options and you can bind it to use that high performance video card setting there. So in some cases where you may have multiple GPUs, if you have an Intel onboard GPU, and then you've also got a nice, you know, beefy NVIDIA, you want to make sure, don't let Windows decide, because then it'll be switching in and out of the different GPU. You don't want to do power saving, so it will save that. And then what that'll do, what you really want to do is restart your software after we get to that point, and you'll notice a marked improvement. If you haven't made those adjustments, you will notice a marked improvement on there. So that's one of the common things that we do see when we're working in getting somebody set up as a new customer, or if, you know, we've been using a certain component, you know, a certain PC in the office, and maybe we got a new computer, right? So because everything's got a lifespan, you know, everybody's going to have to buy a new laptop at some point, and a lot of times, you know, you kind of set it and forget it, but now I've got this new computer and I need to get it reconfigured. So we have to go back through all of those different steps. And doing that is you're going to see a lot better performance out of your system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would imagine that that helps a lot in terms of workflow and data management, which was that hot button issue that a lot of people mentioned in that poll question. I want to acknowledge there were some people that ahead of this webinar sent in some questions, and I really appreciate that. And so I think a couple of those questions came in specific to mobile mapping. Mike, do you have those handy?
I do. So we had a couple of questions on in running some data from Pegasus 2 information. So we have one question is one common request we get is to produce a crossfall report, and sometimes the smoothest reporting of pre-existing or newly laid asphalt. Can we just trust the point cloud data without adjusting it to ground control to calculate lane across all fall percentages? And secondly, part of that question is level ground controls would help to alleviate any tilt in the point cloud, misaligned roll, pitch, yaw, etc., which would yield skewed percentages. But then applying ground control can be kind of time-consuming and costly. Is there a way to check or fix tilt before we scan a highway without ground controls? And I will send that over to Jonathan because he is our expert in that realm.
Okay. To answer that question, I would say you're right in one regard that, you know, ground control is always going to give you kind of a source of truth that you can take your mobile or your kinematic data and tie it to, and then come back with your checks. But also I understand in some scenarios you may want to, you know, you may not have the option even to put your ground control out. So this is where I tell most people it is absolutely critical not to cut corners on the static or dynamic alignment. So because overall, the better quality your PPK trajectory is starting out, the better result you're going to get with that raw roll, pitch, and yaw data off of your PPK trajectory. So if you can find the critical things for that are open sky. You want to have really good open sky. If you can, find a big parking lot that you've got, or just somewhere that you can kind of get out with no interference for your GPS data. Even if you have to drive a little ways to get that, it's worth it in the long run for your overall trajectory health, because your original PPK trajectory is our starting point. So that is, you know, the better your starting point is, we can only go up from there. So if you go out and get a good static and dynamic collection and then come back, that's going to overall just improve the entire your entire situation. So make sure you have good open sky, make sure you're doing your dynamic alignment. I tell people, like a digital clock, kind of do a boxy figure 8, slow it down, speed up, make sure you're making left and right turns to really get that GNSS solution tied up. So that's the way to go about that. And then let's say that if you need added levels of confidence, there are ways that you can go in for, like in the specific example with the crossfalls. You can actually go into Inertial Explorer, which everyone does have. If you've got a mobile mapping system, you can run Inertial Explorer. You have a license for it through with Pegasus Manager or Pegasus Office. That being said, if you don't have the standalone installer that I'm about to show, just get in touch with support and we can help you out with that. Let me share my screen here and I'll show you one way you can sort of check that attitude. So make myself a presenter here. All right, can everyone see that?
Yeah. Oh, there we got it. Got it.
There we go.
There we go.
Gotcha.
So this is CPO. Inside of CPO, you kind of get a glimpse of this is the original trajectory. It gives you an idea of like green and red as far as like what areas you might want to focus on. This gives you an overall idea of your trajectory quality. So you could look at this and say, okay, well, if I'm green in this area, my tilt's probably good. But all of these trajectories are processed within Inertial Explorer, which you can open up. And this is kind of this is a different project, but this is an example trajectory that I picked up just to show you where you can look at this stuff. So once the trajectory is processed, you can go into this plot results window, and this gives you all of this more detailed information that you can access. So this estimated position accuracy is a chart that you're seeing within Pegasus Office there. But in this particular case, if you're talking about your crossfalls, you might want to look at this estimated attitude accuracy. So you look at this, And this is a plot of your actual roll and pitch and your heading. The heading information is not going to be as important for your crossfalls, but then this is what you'd want to look at here. So we're within 1500ths of an arc a minute for the most of this. So you would just want to take a look at this. You could even provide this with your reporting and say, this is a spot that, if we had a big spike here, for example, for some reason, you may want to just avoid that spot within your, use a different pass if you have multiple passes. This is where you can go in and sort of check that information. You can always right click on this stuff and then say go to map as well, and it'll take you to that location. So hopefully that helps answer that question for you.
Yep, and then there was actually a secondary question, kind of a follow-up there. When adjusting a point cloud model to ground control, what is the radius of influence from a single ground control point? Seeing how the model is rubber sheeted, for lack of better terms, does ground control point 1 adjust the point cloud halfway to ground control point 2, for example?
So there's different adjustment methods that we can use, and as a mobile mapping user, it sounds like you're using Pegasus Manager. There's two different methods in there. You've got to adjust by time and by position. Position is the more rubber sheet method, where you're fencing in that whole location with a polygon, and then you're adjusting within that. So it's only going to affect and rubber sheet that polygon area. And then adjustment by time, which I think might be what you're referring to, it will take your ground control point and then go 10 seconds in time on either side of that point to propagate the adjustment error. So that's the way that works.
Cool. Now, I'm going to get into some of the other questions because they are rolling in rapid, and we got some really good ones in here. I think this will probably go to either Andrea or Matthew. But the question is, what is the recommended procedure for backing up projects? Do you recommend storing raw scans or just the Register 360 projects? Is that enough? Server versus hard drive backups. What do you think is going to help the customer the most?
Like, I can start if you'd like, Matthew. But
yeah, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but you can do the talking here.
Okay. Well, raw scans are always good to back up. We recommend keeping the raw data because if anything happens with your project and you cannot import it again or access it, you still have that raw data. So keep your raw data forever. So raw scans. And then backing up the project, archive it. Always archive your project. I've had customers that take a project from the drive. Let's say this is on a project on E, and they just move it in Windows Explorer from E to F, and then they can't connect to it. Well, it's because of the way they moved it. And you can't just move a Register 360 project around like that because it's encrypted. You need to fast archive it or relocate it. But relocation is only for projects that you're actively working on. So our recommendation, raw data and archiving. And I don't know if you'd like to demonstrate that, Matthew.
Yeah, I've got some examples to show exactly what you're talking about here. So what you've got is obviously I've got multiple hard drives in my system, and I definitely recommend that you do that whenever we're giving talks on large data management and backing up and things like that. You definitely want to have these things are cheap these days, right? So obviously you want to have a raw data storage method in place. These like the B2G files from the BLK to go, or if we've got RTC projects, these are actually the raw projects that come off of the scanner, right? So it's definitely a good idea to have some type of a backup, at least for a certain period of time. We don't want to store terabytes of raw data forever unless you do. I mean, it's really going to depend on the type of project and, hey, are we going to have to revisit this project? Once you have this data imported into a Register 360 project, as Andrea was talking about, and for our legacy users who have actually used Cyclone Core in the past, it's going to be a little bit different. I mean, it's actually going to be just completely different because we don't have an IMP file. Okay, and you can't just grab, you don't want to browse down into this active project directory and get in there. There's nothing good that you can do in this directory. Don't change the names of them. These are all encrypted to the location and to the particular hard drive that you're in, right? So there's nothing that you're going to be able to get in here and manipulate for any reason. Okay, if you do need to move a project around, and it's encrypted that way for a reason, right? It's for data security and stability. So what we're going to have is, if you do need to relocate a project, okay, so let's say I'm just going to take this Dulles Airport, and you want to have multiple project folders set up. All right, now you set those up over here. This is all in your projects and storage tab in Register 360, right? Under projects and storage, you can access this at any time. And because you saw that I actually had multiple different hard drives, I have multiple different project directories. Now, these are not directories that you set up per project. It's actually a storage directory where your projects are going to go whenever you create them. And you can manage all of that right here from your projects tab. So if you do feel like a drive is getting a little bit full and you want to relocate it, again, I can't stress this enough to you. Please don't drag and drop from the actual Windows folder. And I think that my camera has frozen up here. But so in essence, what you want to do is come down here to relocate. So if that project is on D, I want to put it over on E, then we'll click the relocate button and it'll do it. Everything that you have for your project management is right here in this particular thing. Now, archiving, there's only one way to do it, right? And it's setting up this archive file. Okay, you set up your archive directory, again, right over here in your projects and storage. And if we want to take a project and seal it up, put it away, maybe we've met delivery on it, everything is good to go, but I don't want to get rid of the project, and I maybe for two reasons, I might need to get back in that project at some point in time in the future to review something, or maybe I need to add to it. Maybe this is phase 1 of a project, and next year we're going to be in phase 2. Well, I don't want to have 75 gigs of project data just sitting there on my drive. So let's archive it. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to select those projects. You can select multiples if you want, and you want to come down here and export a project archive. It's right here under this button here. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a .raf file. Okay, these are the only files that we want to be dragging and dropping. And you could take, once that RAF file is created, that is your backup. You can put that on a big external drive. You can put it on cloud storage on your server, whatever you want to do. And the good thing about the RAF file is it's very stable. I can't think of a time where we had an RAF file corrupt. Really, I mean, I haven't seen anything. So it's very safe. But the other thing is it's going to shrink it by 20%. And then when you do import back from an RAF file, see, if I've got a directory where I'm storing all of my RAF, my backups, when I click import here, I can select, it's going to look for that RAF folder and it's going to find that. So if I wanted to bring in the USMC, I can actually re-import it back to an active project. It doesn't convert the active project, and it's not going to foul the RAF by importing it back off of that file. But what it does is it brings it back in exactly the same state that you left it. So you don't have to worry about re-importing from the raw data. So the way that they've got this set up, again, is it's actually very, very nice, because you can have full on project control of relocation, backing up, whatever you want to do right here from a central window within Register 360. But let me stress that again, you don't want to go into Windows and you don't want to go in here and start dragging and dropping things out of these folders, because it's just not. Now, again, if we do want to go into here, I can bulk select a bunch of RAF files. I can drag and drop those, but you don't want to do that with an active project. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think the only time that I've seen an RAF have challenges is if the files are gargantuous.
Yeah,
And
that can actually affect it
and in
too.
that case, essentially an RAF is essentially a zip file. So it takes, and that's why the data is shrunk by 20%. So most of the information inside the project is essentially zipped together, so in a tighter package. So if you ever run into anything like that, use the quick archive. Because that just makes basically a copy of all the folders, and you can put it in the same folder, and then that way you just don't have to worry about it, and it's you'll have the same data available to you. Great information. We have the elephant in the room here with this next question is what will the workflow for plant modeling moving forward be? So I know that and I will take that one because there's really nothing to show other than it be a talking point. But we all know that our beloved cycling core is getting a little old and it's starting to go away. So those that all have perpetual licenses, then you have a perpetual license. It will never go away. The thing will always work in the version that you have today. Now, with that being said, that there is a massive amount of work being done currently to port and have feature parity in Cyclone 3DR. So a lot of the plant modeling tools are going over there. We already see some piping modeling over in there right now. There'll be some new versions coming out later on in a few months that will have additional capabilities in there. So you will starting to see a lot of these capabilities show up in 3DR. Furthermore, that there is also a lot of these plant applications being built into and improved in some of the CloudWorks areas. So you can actually go into your CloudWorks areas and start doing your piping, your steeling, your steel modeling, and those types of things in those types of environments. So there is a lot of work being done currently. So we know about it and is being worked on, probably one of the highest priority things as well. So that is going to be some of the things moving forward and going in there. I have another great question here. This is actually data from an MS60, so scan data. This is a really good one. So what is the workflow in Cyclone 3DR? What is the best way or best settings that we can put in there for creating a digital terrain model, a DTM, using the data from the MS60? So this is going to be a 3DR question. So John, did you want to take that one?
Sure. With MS60 data, I would treat it in the same way that I would treat any other data from our other scanners. Once you get it from, depending on whether you're processing it directly in Infinity with the MS60 or if you're bringing it into Register 360 or Core, and you bring that over to Cyclone 3DR, you bring that in as maybe an E57 or an LGS, whichever you can export from your initial processing software. Bring that data in, and then I would probably go through this like the standard DTM workflow, which I'll show you right here. Let me get back to showing my screen. I'll open up 3DR. This is not MS60 data that I'm about to show you, but I'll show you where the tool is. So let's see, wait for that to show up.
Got it now.
Okay, so the tool is up here under surface modeling. So you'd bring in your MS60 data as a point cloud that would be floating over here. It would pop up in the cloud group for you. And then you would go to surface modeling, and then you would go to DTM. So when I select this, you'll see I have the option for DTM. We click on that, and then here you can go through. There's a lot of different options you can go through, but the main one is this, your max slope. So this basically just sets your expected slope value. So if you did this on stockpiles or the side of a hill, you'd want to turn this up because this is going to be the maximum slope that the DTM will generate at. But if you're in an intersection like this, you would probably turn that down. But that's essentially the way you would do it. Just like with other standard data, it's more or less just getting it from the MS60 into E57, LAS, or LGS format and bringing it over.
Good deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have, I have a Register 360 question now. There's, I know a lot of people talking, I know we spend a lot of time on talking to people about settings, and especially during import. What are some of the optimal settings in Register 360 that maximizes the speed of import of data? Matthew, you want to take that one?
Sure. And aside from what we're talking about with with the GPU, that is probably one of the big things. Let me just come over here and grab this monitor here. But what, you know, we want to make sure that our system is balanced, right? So if we come over here and I look at my performance, one of the biggest things and cheapest ways that you can import your, you can change your import performance is getting the proper type of hard drive. I definitely recommend using M.2 drives, right? They're the little NVMe drives. They're cheap. They're about $100. They're probably less than $100 a terabyte now. You know, and you can really speed things up a lot. It's that sequential read write speed, you know. So when we have multiple drives in here, well, I've actually got two things. I've got one hard drive that's actually dedicated directly to my project data, right? And then over here, I've got another 2 terabyte drive that I have dedicated just for temporary space, right? Just for temporary files. And that can actually that can change the performance of your system remarkably. And then, you know, just making sure that we have enough RAM. I've got 128 gigs here, and making sure that we have multiple cores. So once we get all of that squared away and our GPU is coordinated and everything like that, you want to check under your import settings here, okay? And these things are in our import settings of Register 360, right? We've got fast mode, balanced mode, and safe mode. So safe mode is actually going to use one of your threads, all right? One thread to import, and it's going to take a long time. Balanced is going to use about half of your system's resources. And then fast mode is going to consume every bit of CPU, RAM. It's going to max out. It's going to really, so if you have a need to be multitasking, you know, maybe you've got to work on a Revit model, maybe you're, you know, working on something in CAD or whatever you're doing, you don't want to use fast mode because it's going to basically consume all of your system's resources. The other thing is our pano images. Okay, a lot of folks will come down here with your pano images and it's like, okay, well, I want these 5120 images. I want them, they're really nice. Everything looks good. I'm out there with an RTC or maybe a BLK. And, you know, we look at this as, well, I want to import the highest quality data possible, right? But I always say you want to make sure that you import based off of what your deliverable is going to be. So if you don't need that super high quality 5K image, maybe you can drop down to a 2048 resolution image, and you're going to do two things. I mean, you're not going to, it's going to import way faster, but it's also going to make a smaller data set. If you go from 2048 to 5K images, you can effectively increase the project size by 50% just in image quality alone, which is going to take a lot of time for your GPU to process. It's going to slow down your import. Now, if the project warrants that, then that's good. But if we're just doing topo meshes and, you know, planimetrics and normal stuff, maybe we can get away without doing that, that high resolution image. Mm-hmm. So, you know, a couple of things like that we can tweak in there. But having those good system resources, having that super high sequential read write speed on your hard drives. And if anybody wants to take a look at what our computer specifications are, they're right there in the help menu. Okay, they're right there in the help menu. And I would say let's shy away from this minimum spec. You know, you got minimum spec, you're going to get minimum performance. But let's look basically more at the recommended workstation specs. And, you know, I'd say 64 gigs of RAM is about as low as you want to go for a good scanning computer, right? One that you're going to be scanning, processing all this big data. And, you know, get you a good 8 gig video card. You won't regret it. And then again, the internal SSDs, you know, that's really going to be for best results. So we can actually support up to 2,000 setups in a Register 360 project. So, you know, again, the days of doing 100 scans and that being a lot of data are kind of in the past. So you want to make sure that you do have a system that's up to spec, or over spec for what you want to do, and your import's going to go faster, your exports are going to go faster. You're just going to have a much better experience using our products.
True, and I love the fact that you pointed out temporary space. One key point, I know that, and probably Andrea could probably second this. Temporary space is pretty important to both import and export, right? So typically you want to have available in your temporary folders about 3x of the space of the size of the data that you're dealing with, just because of, as Matthew pointed out, a lot of the size of these files are the images, because the RTC and some of the other scanners take tons and tons of imagery. So that's it's important to keep that in mind, that that there is an awful lot of data in that fact. Continuing with Registry 360, Matthew, next question is, what are some of the best workflows recommended to help clean up noisy data in Registry 360, such as scan overlap, refraction, cars, etc., that are there? So I know that we have a very cool smooth surface tool in there, as well as unfortunately with refraction off of windows, we just have to do that manually. But there are some pretty cool tools with refraction and cleaning up things like that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we used to say a lot, Mike, and I'm just going to share my screen here. There we go. Because in the transition from Cyclone Core over to Register 360 and 3DR, one of the things I've heard our users say a lot is, how do we use that smooth surface utility? I've seen people take a Register 360 project and relocate it and bring it back into Cyclone Core just to remove noise and stuff. And we don't need to do that. There's actually a really good, really good utility in here, and it takes a little bit. I mean, it took me a second to get the hang of it, but it's really nice. If for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about when I say Cyclone Core, or if you say, hey, what you'll do is you'll engage this tool up here, find smooth surface, and then you'll basically just come in here and double click sample points, and you want to keep this tool active while you're doing it, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to find that surface that is existing in the project, and it's going to basically do almost like a little classification where it's going to find everything that is surface, and it's going to isolate that, and it's going to find everything that is not surface, and it's going to mark it, and you'll see it'll show up as red. I think I'll take just a second.
I'll go for a minute, but I mean, to carry on that same thread is, you're absolutely right. The smooth surface tool in here, as Matthew said, that you kind of click on it to give it seed points, and some of the points will show up as red, and then we can start using some of our windowing tools just to window in the areas, so that some of those points that came out of the windows that Matthew has in this data set, we just window those and then just delete those out of the surface. Now the other thing is, let's say that you're on a road and the road is sloped or it's crowned. So typically in these seed points, it's looking for some sort of a planar surface. So if you needed to continue on the road or anything slopes, you just keep giving the program seed points, so that it'll just keep going on, and then more of those points will turn red, that you can go ahead and deal with them that way.
Yeah, you can kind of build that surface along as you're moving through your project.
Yep. Then when it comes to something like windows, interior of a building, inside of a building, or a refraction off of a mirror, typically I think the best thing to do is just probably go into those individual scans, and then you can just window those areas in your spherical view, and then you just kind of delete those out, because in currently for many people, there's actually multiple versions of the point cloud that's being saved inside the project, so that you can actually delete points out in a registration window. You can delete them out in both the registration window, as well as what's being viewed on the screen. So in that case, when you're deleting via a window or something like that, that you can actually do those things. So now that the tool has found the surface, I'll let Matthew take back over.
Yeah, so basically you see everything that's gray is not going to be touched, right? But it's really nice to be able to add to that surface as you go back through. So once your smooth surfaces, you can always add additional seed points. And what it'll do is it'll include that in your selection set, you see, as we go through here. So basically, while this tool is engaged, you won't be able to delete anything that is gray. So in this case, we can go right in here, and right next to our smooth surface, we've got our little polygon fence. And I can go right in here and window these areas in that are not part of that surface, like this, right? And so you can actually just tell it to delete inside, and it'll clean those points right out. And remember, it's not going to take out anything that's gray. So it's important that we come through and see, it's going to take just a second here. I'm asking a lot of this little laptop here today, Mike, with everything that I got plugged into it.
Now, another point to make note of, these points are not physically deleted out of the project either.
Exactly.
So exactly. Like for anybody that's with us today that is from the core days, it's really hidden from view. So you can always restore those points that are being out of there. So that's a great cleaning tool right there. And like I said, I think in some of the instances that I've been cleaning roads with this tool, many times I have actually found it to be quicker than the smooth surface tool in core, just because that I can be very specific about the smaller areas and clean some of those areas, which is really good. Really good. That's a great one there. Let's see. So let's go in there. Let's see. Deletes all the data. So, okay, yeah. So just as I was saying, using the floor flatness tool, I found the hard way that I've deleted outside the box, and it deletes a lot of data in the undo. And is there an undo button that I can go back and restore all the data to clean it? Yes, there is. So in any of the scans, so Matthew, if you can open up once this finishes, we'll open up the tree, and then we can click on one of the scans in the tree, and there is a restore button that we can go ahead and do those types of things there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when we're inside the smooth surface utility, the undo does not work. Correct. There is an undo button, but it does not work in there. Right. But what you can do is you can always window in an area, either in the tree or in your bundle cloud view, and you can put a polygon fence back down in there. Yep. And when you right click on that, you can tell it to restore inside that fence. And you can, if you want to do it by scan, you can, on a scan by scan basis, but you can see once this regens, you'll see here in just a second, it'll be, you'll see the whole project here, but you won't see any of that. That was actually reflection from the windows, but a little different application there. But anytime, like I could come in here and right click here, and I can say restore deleted points. And we can actually choose whether we want just the visual points on, or we want the cloud to cloud points, or both, right?
Yep.
Or in the same motion, I can put down a fence here, right? Like this, and highlight that region, and I can always get it to do it this way. Now, what the good thing is about doing it from the bundle view is that if you had removed data that actually occurred in multiple different scans, you can bring all that data back from the multiple scans, and again, we can edit visual points or edit cloud to cloud points. And so that's another way. If you do reach the oh my gosh, I deleted a little more than I wanted to, you can very easily restore those back into the view with no problem.
Awesome. We're going to go back over to 3DR. So we have another 3DR question. So we've got a question that came in. What is the best method / settings to create a mesh in 3DR? So I think there's probably a couple ways. So John, I think I'm going to hand that one over to you. You can go into some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely subjective as to what you're trying to accomplish. What I would say, if you're doing something like we talked about earlier with the MS60 and we're trying to create terrain, then I would use that surface modeling DTM tool because it has a built-in ground filter. So it's going to try to find the ground based off of the parameters that you set. If you're trying to create an object that is, say, like you're trying to model a statue or a building facade, that might be a scenario where you might want to use the 3D mesh tool. The 3D mesh tool takes into account not necessarily the Z direction from the ground up or from the side, but it's more of a proximity-based meshing. So you will have something that will sort of morph, the mesh will morph around the object, almost like you're draping to it. So there's two different methods. And then to go one step further beyond that, I would say if you're looking for an extremely high detail mesh, you can always, 3D mesh has an option to run meshing in 2 steps is what it's called. And the first pass will create kind of a base mesh, and then the second pass will go back and use the point cloud to interpolate that data and tighten it up. And you can dial those parameters down to shrink your triangle size and increase your detail level to whatever you see fit. The only trade-off is if you want to get the more detail that you go, it'll let you go all the way down to a millimeter triangle size if you want to. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, and that will also take a very long time to calculate. So
Right.
just keep that in
Right.
mind as well.
Yeah, and then also the smaller, the more triangles, then if you're going into 3D, Civil 3D for any reason, just remember that's going to make Civil 3D sweat if you make that mesh too tight.
Awesome. And then continuing with 3DR, is there, after extracting contours in 3DR, is there a way to go back and assign field codes to those? So just basically a COGO point. So I think that we're talking there probably about the new virtual surveyor tool that is in 3DR.
Yeah. So one way you could do it, I'll share my screen so we can take a look. Let's just, we're going to run really quick through this and we'll make a live mesh. So I'm going to use that surface modeling DTM tool here just for the webinar. We're going to keep it on flat and run it on fast. So we're not going to get curbs and things out of here, but this is just, you can see that ground filter I was talking about. It does a really good job actually of filtering out that ground. And then we'll generate contours on this. So there's a couple different ways we could do it. We could use the virtual surveyor tool here, and that would assign what it does is it assigns the lines and points to kind of a layer that whenever you export out, or we could do the typical extraction of contours. We could just go here and say contour lines. This is probably a pretty small surface, so we'll make 10th of a foot contours and see what that looks like. Yeah, so there we have 10th of a foot contours. From this point, you would want to break this out. So the contour lines will come here as a group, and then you could go over and we would want to ungroup that, and you'll see that turns each contour into its own set of polylines. Then when you bring this over, rather than having maybe a code assigned to it to field to finish, you would assign this to a layer as you send it to AutoCAD and move it there. Or the other option would be you could convert each one of these individual lines into a set of points and then assign feature codes to that after the fact. In doing so, though, just watch out because you might want to smooth these first. If you have a complex shape, you're going to get a lot of vertices and it's going to be a big text file. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to go back to Register 360. This is a great question because I know this is often asked here. In Register 360, is there a way to create backups during the cleaning up process? For example, in Core, you are able to create multiple model spaces to save your work as you go. So I think there's a couple of ways that we can actually tackle that, but I think probably the easiest way to do it, and Matthew, I probably could show it, is some of the versioning tools that are in there.
Well, actually, I don't recommend using versioning for that because versioning does not include cleaning. If you clean one version, it cleans all the versions. So using the versioning tool, let's see, let me choose my screen here. So if you use your versioning tools here and I create a version And then if I've got 4 or 5 different versions, that's really not going to include the cleaning component. So let's stay away from that one. And instead, what I would say is if you need to save a certain point in time here in your project, go ahead and just create that archive file. And I do that because like if I have a bunch of different versions here like this, and you know, if I switch to this version and I clean this building out, I'll show you this right here. All right. So this is going to be the other version of the same project once it comes up here. Let's see. I may be having a little bit of bandwidth issue here, Mike.
That's
But
okay.
in essence, if you go in and you clean any of this cloud in this version,
Yep.
it's gonna clean that same data from all of these different versions.
Yep.
So we don't want to use that. But what I would say is let's definitely, if you think that you're gonna get in and clean something, let's do a snapshot in time. Just go ahead, select that project, export your project archive or your fast archive, and that's going to give you a go back to point if you need it.
Yep. The other thing is that I don't know if many people know that, but you can also finish the whole project. So if you've cleaned something and you finish the project and you actually export it, so what you've done is in the reporting area, you've created a deliverable. And then if you went to go back and you actually cleaned something else and you created another deliverable, you would create a secondary deliverable. Now you can actually, when you export those files, you can either LGSX or E57, whatever, and you'd have these different files. The other place that you can actually use those areas, you can also put these things up in, say, Reality Cloud Studio, because Reality Cloud Studio is almost being like a giant warehouse for all of your data, and you can have different versions of your data in there. So you could create a project with different folders with different states of the data in there. So that's another option there. So that's a great point there.
Mm-hmm.
We still have some great questions coming in. We are getting close to the top of the hour, so we might want to take just 1 or 2 more.
Yep.
And for those of you who are still on the line, if you want to stay on, if we go a few minutes over, you're welcome to stay on. If you cannot, a link to the recording of today's session will go out to everyone tomorrow. And I do encourage you, as you exit, there will be a survey that comes up on your screen. I would encourage you to please fill that survey out. That is very helpful to us in planning ahead so that we know what content you would like to see from us in the future. And feel free to drop in there that you would love more of these Ask the Expert sessions, because we would love to host more of them for you. We're already planning on doing some of them coming up. So just let us know in that exit survey what you would like to see from us, and we will be happy to provide that for you. So Mike, let's go ahead and address maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll have to end for
Good. I actually have a very good one. It's a very long question, but I love this question because it is, I think that this is definitely something we want to address there. So the question is as follows. It says, for some context, I work in many large New York City parking garages with tight, difficult ceiling spaces. I'm trying to figure out the best way how to quickly and accurately draw 2D reflected ceiling plans, or RCPs. I figure hardware-wise, it would perhaps be some combination of a terrestrial scanner and a SLAM scanner. Then software-wise, probably taking a slice of the ceiling in Register 360 and drawing the 2D reflected ceiling plane manually from there. While helpful, I am anticipating a world where there is a magic button that can accurately and effectively extract complex 2D data from a point cloud and draw and export straight to an industry standard floor plan and or reflected ceiling plan. If there is not currently anything out there, is there anything of this nature in the works? Thank you for your response. I think I love that question, because now what you're doing is you're essentially starting to combine different scanning technologies. So absolutely correct that you would probably combine the data from an RTC and say the BLK to go to create that plan. Now, creating your reflected seating plane, I think you can probably do a couple of different ways. One is, of course, as you know, as you mentioned, you could probably do some sort of a cross-sectional thing, or look at a cross-sectional view in Register 360, which is typically what we call we call the QA tool, the quick slice tool. So you could use that, or I think more interesting, and Matthew, if your computer's back up and running, you probably go into, say, CloudWorks, and then go into some sort of like a floor plan type of thing, and or using the clipping tools in CloudWorks and for AutoCAD to very quickly create some of these deliverables in 2D, because including with CloudWorks, we also have a lot of orientation tools. So a lot of these orientation tools are the CAD systems orientation tools or UCS tools, but we've promoted them up into our window as well, so that they will be interactive with the point cloud. So now that you can very quickly maneuver around in your view there. So you can see that Matthew is flipping this thing around very quickly, a very large piece of data, so that you can go in there and start taking some slices in there and quickly create some of your 2D plans. I'll let Matthew take it from here.
Yep, so we're just gonna go in here and pick my second wall point. Now this was just gonna, it's gonna actually open our quick slice floor plan. And so this is basically just the bottom floor of a building. And we did this using 2 BLK to go scanners and 1 BLK generation 2 to do the outside. And when we do this, it's really cool. So we can always go in there and do a clip. And let's say here, I wanted to do a 2-foot clip. We can get in here. But once we've got the quick slice established, what we can do is open this new floor plan utility. And this is really, really slick. Actually, I'm going to change over to a different coloration, and we're going to use the reflective intensity because the contrast is a little better on it. And so we'll just, this is almost, it's like a little sub utility within CloudWorks, right? So I get a lot of people that say, why CloudWorks? Why don't I just want to, bring in an RCP or something like that? And the answer is there's a lot of power that you get whenever you're using your LGS file in CloudWorks, and you can very easily come in here and manipulate this data by adjusting the slice size, and you can also adjust the slice location. So like if you wanted to do a clean floor plan on this building and you see there's a lot of furniture laying around, right? Or maybe there's people walking around or anything like that. I'm not going to say there's an easy button, okay? That's what everybody wants to have, an easy button here. But what I would definitely want to stress is the point that we get where we have automated things, then your level of automation also is directly related to your level of QA/QC. So the more we automate a feature, the more you're going to have to go back and do your QA/QC on it, right? So having some level of human intel in the process of extracting this data, you're going to have more confidence, and it's going to be a lot better for you when we go. So see, now I'm going to move this slice down a little bit thinner, but we've got a little slicer here that's going to update my view. So what I did was I moved my slice up to the top of the room like this. And then, when we just want to say, we can do the find walls, but I like to be able to create my polyline. So I'm basically just going to click on these wall surfaces, and it's going to make those walls for me, just like this, right? And then once we get done with that, we can end the polyline there. And then after that, there's a button right here that says send to CAD there. And that's going to send all those polylines that I actually made right back over. And you can see here, those lines they're fit into the point cloud. And then we'll just, again, the QA/QC part is not going to go away at this point. We still got to get in here and true things up. So, but, again, as Mike said, there's things that are, quote, in the works that are very exciting. And the more we develop and evolve these tools, the more you're going to see that automation type workflow where we can go in and just, select the whole, we could go in here and select a bunch of rooms in here and just say, extract my walls, extract my floor plans, do whatever we need to do like that. So hopefully that kind of sheds a little bit of light on that one.
Yeah, and then some of those tools that when you're creating those polylines, it's also using the orthogonized tools too. So it's actually putting those in there in best fit, making the corners a 90-degree angle. Of course, we all know nothing's ever built that way. So
exactly,
that's the way that, as Matthew mentioned out, and very important to go in and QC some of these things because it it has been orthogonized. Now, of course, if you're going over to Revit, you need to leave it that way because Revit does need to have those perfect degrees of 90, 45, et cetera, those types of things. So, Christy, I know we're at a little bit beyond the top of hour. Do we want to keep going, or we just want to call it a day? We have a ton of questions, so we can always do another one of these later on.
Yeah, I think for the sake of everyone else's time, I think we do need to go ahead and end for today. Thank you so much to those of you who stuck with us here and asked such fantastic questions. For those of you who asked questions and we did not get to address those in our live session, we'll have one of our experts reach out to you to address that question. Again, we do plan to come back and do another one of these Ask the Expert sessions again in the near future. Please do go ahead and fill out that exit survey as you leave today's session. We do hope that this has been a very valuable experience for you. I just also want to mention the experts that we've had here today are also trainers at our upcoming LGS University. In the past, we've called this HDS University. I've plugged a link there in the chat. So this year we've expanded the content across more of the workflows and products within Leica Geosystems. It is a Leica Geosystems University. These are just a few of the trainers that we'll have there. I know that I believe we are completely full for this year's session, but if you are interested, go ahead and let us know, because we want to do this again in the near future. We want to make sure that we're providing that training and that education that we know you need. So thank you again for allowing us to serve you today. Jonathan, Matthew, Andrea, and Mike, thank you so much for your time. We hope all of you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Christy. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.